Marina, thank you very much for being on the podcast. It's a huge honor.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
So, you're working on season 6 for The Masked Singer.
So we finished filming season 6 a few weeks ago, and right now it's in post production. And then I believe season 6 airs September 22nd, 23rd. It's a double night premiere.
Oh, that's cool. So, this is the sixth time you're on the show. How is this season?
Yes.
How was it different for you, like for preparation of the costumes?
The past 3 seasons have been very interesting, with not being able to ignore the global pandemic that we're in and also working with strict protocols on set. That hasn't really changed for us. Everything is by the rules, and that always adds that extra layer of stress, on top of being able to create. So season 6, I would say, was a little easier than 4 and 5 for me, just because for both myself and my team, we've had the time to adapt to our circumstances. And at the same time, still trying to push the boundary of making the show better and bigger and constantly brainstorming new ways and new ideas, how to really engage our audience. So for me, I would say, of course, every season is a challenge. This one has up and downs, and I think we just did our best trying to make it work.
I think you already covered every single animal in previous 5
Right.
seasons. How do you come up with the new ideas for the new costumes?
Every season, I kind of dive deeper into imagination. It's almost like a very kid-like approach, not stepping outside the box, trying to create new stories with characters, and challenging ourselves as far as like, what objects can we use then to bring forward? What food can I work with? Not necessarily doing animals, but I know the kids love it because it's like superheroes for them. But every season, especially for season 6, you'll see we kind of stepped a little outside the box and tried new variables to turning into costumes, which were my challenges, how to make objects, walkabouts, but also a costume. And that's a big thing for me. I don't want our show to look like a mascot show. I want that distinct difference between creative labor and unique techniques of sewing and still making an elaborate costume rather than just something somebody could see that's being store bought. Like I take a lot of pride in all of our work being very unique and different.
And when it comes to celebrities choosing those costumes,
Right.
how does that work? Like you first learn about celebrities who are participating, and then picking the costumes for them,
Yeah,
or
it's kind of like a domino effect. So I create the artwork prior to any casting, and then I sit and collaborate with the producers and the network to see what are our favorites, what would we like to see different on the upcoming season, and then I work closely with the producers and the casting director. So once I know who's being booked on the show, I then kind of either do my own research, I already know who this person is, and try to pitch a few ideas to them directly that will either hit right on the nose or actually detour them to where it becomes even more of a guessing game. And then it becomes collaboration. I work with a talent one on one and with our teams, explaining our build process, explaining how we're going to do things so that they're also comfortable ahead of time. And then I get them in fittings and we go from there. And, hopefully things are great. And sometimes we've had things where we had to change them on the spot. But then from that point on, they almost become and evolve into that character, and my job's done.
how do you able to keep these people, like keep the faces behind the masks secret, because that's a point of the show, even though there are plenty of people
Yeah.
involved, right, in the process.
There's only a few of us to truly know who's being casted on each season. And from that point on, the show really takes precaution and all measures to make sure that the talent is in secret, their teams are in secret, everybody gets to wear masks when they're on set. So it does become like a top-notch secret that we kind of do our best to maintain. Within the wardrobe, we of course know who's being casted, and it's still very specific. It's who's being assigned to which character and within my team so that they know who's inside the costume. But overall, like the show is pretty much on the hush hush about who we're casting.
I'm just curious, how do producers pick the celebrities? Because you had everyone from like Lil
Right.
Wayne to Sarah Palin. I'm like, what?
Right.
What is she doing there? How did that happen?
I think that's the beautiful thing of the show is anything goes and everybody's welcome. I don't necessarily know how the entire process begins with casting, and I know they go to drawing boards and come up with interesting names, and also it's talent availability. Everybody's busy, everybody's working, so it's finding that time slot that's perfect for our shooting days, and also keeping the show interesting, and not being stagnant within a particular type of a musician or an actor, and kind of really opening the platform to everybody. And that's what makes it interesting for me. I get different body types, different personalities, different um, interests within the costumes or things they want to be, or sometimes there's really passionate stories behind their choices, and I try to go even a step above and really make it custom and personal. So to answer your question, a lot of it happens internally, and then I kind of get the final stages.
And looking back at this sixth season, were there like some favorite or memorable moments that you had that off stage, on stage?
You know, I'm always so passionate and emotional, and I think I wear all my feelings everywhere. So for me, I always have special moments when it comes to fittings, and then that first time on stage. Um, I think seeing the development process and then having it come to life for me is always like every single time I'll hold my breath, when they're on stage for the first time. And um, we've been so lucky not to have massive wardrobe malfunctions, so I don't have to really stress about that. But I think so many moments are really special to me. Like it's very hard to pinpoint, which one.
Obviously, those costumes are pretty hard to manufacture
Right,
because not only they look beautiful, but the person also have to be able to move on the stage,
right.
right? How do you how do you work on that? Do you try it on yourself and try to move around?
Everything we build is tested, from the beginning stages where I try to understand my own artwork, and I try to work with my illustrator to be like, all right, which details can we add? How intricate, how difficult can I, and how can I challenge myself even more? And then once I have that artwork in front of me, I try in my brain to kind of dissect it in a very scientific way as to how to build it. And then from the fabrics that I go out and choose myself to working with the fabricators that we have, every little thing is really talked about, and really thought through. And sometimes we even surprise ourselves with certain mistakes become even better outcomes. And then when we do like the first initial stages of the masks, I will try them on. Our builders will try them on. We really do try to kind of nitpick our own process and perfect it as much as we can before the talent even tries them on for the first time. And when it comes to weight of costumes, or by now we've learned how to like control our structural builds, what materials to use to cut the weight down, where can we kind of excel on more air vents, and what can we do to really accommodate these costumes. Sometimes it's difficult, there's certain formula to all of them that we have to kind of stick to, and not being able to really cut the weight away, or make something bigger than life. But every time, like, I just love my team so much because we are just like the innovators of how to make this world work. And it's still trial and error for me.
When you look back on all the costumes, I know you've been
Yeah.
asked many times what's your favorite costume, but what was your least favorite? The one that you'll be like,
Least.
I wish I didn't make it, or at least I didn't make it that way.
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I don't, oh my gosh, my least favorite. Um, I wouldn't say I have a least favorite. I think there's a couple that either we ran out of time, and I know myself, I either didn't add the details, or, like most of our simpler builds, I would say, oh my God, you put me on the spot. Because
Yeah.
then I'll be calling out the celebrity. Can we go back to my favorite?
Sure, go ahead.
um,
To your favorite.
um, For me, of course, the most sentimental ones were being able to create the Russian dolls. That was a
Yeah.
huge victory for me. It was an artistic pitch I had since season two, and it was never like we either didn't have the proper casting for it, or it wasn't a good moment, or, no one picked it. And then finally, when I got my trio, it was just, my dream come true. So that was probably one of my favorites, the most sentimental. But then the dragon costume, the seashell costumes. There's just so many that, we're talking about 100 some costumes here. And on top of that, I also do Germany and Belgium. So my head, I always mix everything. But, to be honest with you, I take pride on so many of them. And that's kind of like my biggest secret is when I see the costume complete and we're all happy about it, right? And I get the producer's notes or the department really loves it. And then that's the moment I know something is not completed. So I'll see the costume on stage. And then for me, I'll see differently live than I would on the monitor. So in that moment, when that walkie comes up and I say, as soon as this is done rehearsing, you bring it back to the sewing room or, our creative room, everybody knows we're not done. And for me, that's how I work. And that's what I so much love about the show is I will go so far to add that last little detail to truly make it what it is, which way it's so hard for me, to kind of tell you what's my least favorite or even a favorite because I know we put so much work in each one.
But you have least favorite. Which one is it? I'm kidding. No.
Yes.
So you said you also do Germany and Belgium. When did that start?
I've been with them for a few years now. I've
Interesting.
kind of and I oversee the creative, the conceptual artwork for both countries. So I'll work closely with production to pass over my illustrations or ideas to them. And then they have a brilliant costume designer that does both shows over there, that executes my ideas.
Why don't you just ship them the one they used last season?
Yeah, that there's been a lot of talk internationally, I think, shows being able to share some costumes. And I'm not sure if it's as easy as that sounds. I think
Hmm.
the beautiful part about this kind of franchise is everything that's built for each show is specific to that person. So when you're talking about exchange of costumes or shipping back and forth, it's like things were constructed differently, different sizes, different body types, different ways to approach a certain costume. So in my eyes, originality, authenticity is the better way to go.
I believe this show was originated in Korea. Is it
Yes.
correct? But I'll
Yes.
be I'll be honest with you. When I compare Korean costumes and yours, those are different.
When I was first approached about the show, they did send me all the decks and kind of all the style books from the Korean format. And I just loved the idea of it so much. And then I tried
Yeah.
my own take on it. Like I tried to not even think about what's been done and kind of dive into the world of the experience that I had coming on the show. I've done so many world tours in the past. I've kind of dabbled into massive puppet builds and mask builds. So I took the knowledge that I had and then pitched it to the producers. How about we do it this way? These are the people that I've been working with for years. I know they can execute. And from there, I was given kind of the creative freedom to try a different way, to build a show. And I think we kind of dominoed that through all the other countries. I think we were the first ones to change a little bit, of the execution of the costumes, and then all the other countries followed.
You're very polite because like when I compare your costumes and Korea costumes original,
Right.
because I don't think they put a lot of
Right.
emphasis on costumes. They were more focused on hiding the person behind it.
Yeah, and that's what there was. I think even like two different aesthetics on how the show was originally, formatted, where it was, like you said, being able to create whatever mask, whatever really cool elements of wardrobe that go along with it. And they didn't really have a theme. Some did, and some till this day, I'm like, what, my God, how did they build that? That's so incredible. But I think with us, my goal was to create stories and to create these characters that kind of set the tone before we even hear them sing, and be able to bring out emotions or historical sentiments. I wanted to create a narrative on stage, and I think that's where my design build was very, different from the original concept.
Gotcha. I lost count how many Emmys you got for the Mask Singer itself. Was it two or three?
I was nominated twice, won once, and we're still waiting on
So
the
twice at least. You're gonna
yes.
win. You're gonna win it again. Tell me this, like for people never, um, who would never experience winning something like Emmy, like
Yeah.
myself. I'm not in the industry, and I would never win it even if I were in the industry. How does it feel? Take us back to your very first Emmy.
I mean, my first one was so unexpected, and I mean, I'm gonna get emotional. When I first got the opportunity to be in television, it was in 2010, and X Factor brought
Mhm.
me on board to do all the dancers, and an incredible, really close friend of mine, Brian Friedman, was the creative director. So he gave me a call and he was like, "Hey, the show is coming in. You're wonderful at doing dancers. I pitched your name for the show. Would you like to, interview for it?" So I went in. I knew nothing about television, have never worked in television. And I got the job and had to do all the requirements to get into the union overnight and, start my own show. And I remember my first day sitting there and not knowing what to do. It was just me all day by myself in this trailer. And I finally called the supervisor. I'm like, how does this work? Do we hire a team? How do we design? So that process was so important to me because it literally life just threw me into this massive challenge, and it's national television and it's not a small show, and everything I knew kind of like rolled into one. So when the season was done, a friend, actually my supervisor, called and she was like, "Did you submit for Emmys?" And I was like, "No, I are we eligible? Like, how does it work?" I had no idea. And so I think I was 2 days away from the deadline cutoff for submission. So within those 2 days, I gathered all the information. I submitted, our show, and I forgot about it. Never, it didn't even cross my mind. It was just all I knew is let's submit. And while I was overseas, we won. And again, I didn't check my emails. I didn't have my phone on me. So it was on my flight back that when we landed and I first turned my phone on, I had all these congratulations messages and I didn't understand, what it was for. And finally, I saw the email from my supervisor saying, "Congratulations, we won, congratulations on your first Emmy." And I literally just broke down at the airport, with my bags. At this point, like I was still so new to this world that I couldn't comprehend it, as well as I do now. I think I was so close away, so close to my struggling days. Like that time hasn't passed yet where I felt like I even deserved it. I just like a few years back, was didn't have 50 cents to get a burger, and did so much free work and struggled so hard and worked for so long that when this happened, it took me days, I think, to acknowledge what that meant. And till this day, that's probably the most special win for me.
Wow.
Um, because it was so real, it's not a fairy tale story, it's very like my whole life always seemed like a Cinderella story, it's like I work, I sacrificed a lot. And so when that moment happened, it was, it's almost like comparing it to the birth of my children, on
Mhm.
some degree, because your kids, you patiently wait your entire life to like know what that feeling is like, and until you have it, you can never experience that love and you know and, and just that unconditional feeling of gratitude. And then the same thing happened with my first win. It was just I was so full of like gratitude and I didn't even know who to thank. I think I overthanked everybody. um so it was very rewarding, and and I pass on the story to a lot of people because sometimes the things you least expect like pay off, and till this day, like, you know, I'm humbled and like blown away every single time it happens. You say 5 times, I don't even I really have not never like till this day processed that.
I think you just lost the count because you
Yeah.
get. Yeah, here we go. So how did it change your life from from a professional perspective? Did you
Yeah.
start getting more calls, or did you get your calls answered more often?
Um, I never changed my direction of work. I still till this day even reach out to the projects I want to work with and people I want to work with. I kind of don't look at that as a crutch. I look at it as an acknowledgement. And I think throughout the years, of course, I've gained a lot more respect within my peers. And I think I've proven my work has proven itself to then really shoot higher and shoot bigger and get those kind of opportunities presented, to me, or I reach for those opportunities. Um, I still look at it as a personal acknowledgement, but not something I've ever used to get ahead. You know, I've never used the word Emmy. I don't even have it on my social media, that I'm an Emmy winner. I kind of keep myself, I'm a costume designer, I'm an entrepreneur. I've had incredible accolades that back my work. And that to me constantly shows how great myself and my team could be, and there's still like the sky's the limit for us.
And Emmy is just one of the trophies you won. You've actually won other awards as well.
I received the Costume Designers Guild Award for Masked Singer as well. And then I received a few years back the Hollywood Beauty Award,
Gotcha.
Ellen Mergic Style Award. Yeah.
Well, congrats on that. I mean,
Thank you so much.
it's awesome. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take conversation to different direction. We're gonna go
Okay.
all the way back to your childhood,
Oh,
and we're gonna
perfect.
return to where we are right now.
Yep.
But let's do it chronologically, right?
Okay.
So obviously your name reveals your Eastern European origin. Where were you born and grew up?
Born in Moscow, Russia. Grew up there till I was 10 and 11 months. So when we moved to US, I turned 11. And then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and that's where I went to middle school and high school. And then right after my senior year, well, actually, while I was in my senior year program, I got accepted into FITM, which is the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in LA. And within weeks after graduating high school, I moved to Los Angeles. And then that summer started my first semester.
You said you moved to Phoenix, Arizona
Yes.
from Russia. How
Yeah.
well do you remember USSR back then? Probably.
Right.
How well do you remember the USSR?
Very well. I think I have a lot of childhood memories that kind of never phased away. I remember going to theaters with my mom. I remember constantly being at the Red Square. I remember playing outside. I remember getting kicked out of a public school and then studying all summer to go into an art academy. I remember my childhood a lot, and
What were you
now
kicked out from the school for?
I wouldn't say I was a troubled kid, but I definitely was a strong-headed little girl. I think I might have probably used words I shouldn't have word, maybe like, threw a chair or two. Um, a little bit of a rebellious kid, but you know what? It actually saved my life because when I got accepted to the art academy and my parents worked very hard to kind of get me more in an artistic direction as a kid. That's where like my schooling excelled. My kind of passions developed, my hobbies developed more. So I found my place in education. And the kind of I think slowly that's where I had my sewing classes. Making our own costumes that my mom would help me make for all of our dance recitals. So I think since I was little, like my something was growing inside of me that really like felt connected to the arts.
So at the moment where you started doing what you thought you meant to do, that's when you improved your school performance. Is it fair to
I
say?
think like that's when I was like 9, 10 years old, so I
Mm-hmm.
think art for me was comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It was something I could relate to, I could focus, and being able, I remember when I was little, like I loved cartoons. I loved like The Three Musketeers was one of my favorite movies growing up. So I started, I think like subconsciously, I was paying attention to costumes and the cinematical aspect of it and the theatrical aspect. And I just loved it all. And I loved trying on my mom's clothes. And I think every child does that. But I specifically remember my mom had this like silver sweater and blue leggings that I would steal, and like the late 80s, like it was a trend. And,
Yeah.
I was trying to be older than I was. So it's like for me, I always played around with clothes. And I would say it wasn't until we moved till I was like 13 or 14, um, where I couldn't stop drawing, and even being that young, I remember like 12 or 13, I would start using my mom's nail polish to coloring in my sketches to give it that, 3D effect on my artwork.
Huh.
And that wasn't tip like a typical thing to do. And it just kept, I don't know, I just kept working on it. And I remember even in high school, I wouldn't really pay attention to my classes. I would just sit and draw. And till this day, if you possibly interview some of my classmates, I think it was predictable. Like people knew somehow that's what I was going to end up doing at a very young age.
Do you have any siblings?
I don't, only child.
Okay, so that's why your parents were so supportive of you.
I like I said, since I was young, I've kind of always followed my own
Gotcha.
path. I got in trouble, I got out of trouble. I would get myself into challenging situation and get myself out of it. So I think my parents always knew that my brain was there. I just had to
Hmm.
learn on my own what to do and how to navigate my life. And I think when they finally saw how involved I was with the arts and this didn't go away, this was like years and years over time that when I told them that I got accepted into FITM, and that I was moving, there there was like a huge support system my way. It wasn't a serious conversation. It was, you sure this is what you want to do? And I told him, and I'm like, for me, who I was, I couldn't stay in Phoenix. There was no outlets
Hmm.
for me, and even if California wasn't the right choice at that time, I felt like I needed an escape and I needed to try it, so they were very supportive.
What did your parents do?
My dad in Moscow was a wrestling coach, and my
Nice.
mom was an epidemiologist. And then when we moved here, my dad continued wrestling and then also became a doctor, got a few degrees. I'm so proud of both of them. And then my mom became an RN.
You said your father become a doctor, so they have scientific minds.
Well, my mom was an epidemiologist. My dad was a wrestling coach and then became a teacher.
Oh,
So
gotcha,
it's
gotcha, gotcha.
yes. So they both, yes, scientific, creative, logical. Um, and I was very different from the
Yeah.
two of them. At the
Oh,
same time, I'm also very business savvy to where that was like more of my mom coming
mm-hmm.
through, in the logical side. I've always considered myself surprisingly both sides of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and I use that in my art as well, to where there are certain things that I will let my mind go and design, uh, no boundaries, no limits, and just full on creativity. And then there are certain times I will actually like dissect the design, bring in a very mathematical way of doing so, and kind of follow a structure. So my work, I think that's where it gets kind of across the board because I use so many different techniques.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, and obviously you were a creative person. When did you realize you want to be a designer?
Um, like I said, in high school, I think when I started like really focusing on my artwork, it wasn't until my junior year where I wanted to make something. I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
just like leave it on a 2D print,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to really see if I could turn into something real and something tangible and then photograph it, have it as a memory. So my junior year, I remember I asked to collaborate with a few of my friends who was just the yearbook photographer, and then I found a seamstress that would make my design. I went to Joann's Fabrics, got my fabrics, um, made my first dress, had it photographed, a friend of mine modeled. And from that point on, I think that was kind of like I opened up my own Pandora box, So after I graduated high school, I went back and did the prom fashion show there when I was 18. And then really kind of being thrown into FITM, it just started um, kind of growing into, okay, this isn't a hobby anymore. This isn't just something I love to do. I would love to learn more and I would love to learn every side of this. The business side came a lot later because I think I had to go through my journey and the ups and downs to learn what not to do now.
Mm-hmm.
But the creative side was always there. So when I went to FITM, I geared towards being a fashion designer. That's what I studied. I wanted to have my own clothing line, and then almost doing that for 10 years led me into costume design.
And you did start a fashion design line, right? It was
I did.
what? What was the name of it?
GLAZA. It was a clothing line of one-of-a-kind avant-garde pieces. I started with a few of my friends at school. I had a couple business partners in the beginning. It was men's and women's, just one-of-a-kind, unique things that we would design and started, working every night while still going to school, sewing out of my kitchen, whatever things I had. in my possession with my business partners, and started reaching out to stylists, finding people that we could then, work together, partner up, get it into magazines. I mean, there's so much that went into that. We first got some local press to cover a brand, and then started kind of working on building a small collection, showcasing it at LA Fashion Week. Then again, I would spend so many nights trying to figure out how to do this. So I found a contact in New York that was very interested in what we were doing. So we got the opportunity to showcase New York's Fashion Week.
Oh wow.
So there's, and even that story is interesting because we got the invite to do this avant-garde show over there that was geared towards one-of-a-kind designers and underground designers. I knew nobody in New York, neither did my business partner. So I found somebody that would let us stay with them overnight, literally met somebody online. Um, and we just, got the money, worked very hard. I've always had like three jobs at the same time while doing all this that had nothing to do with my career. Um, and then funded our way to go to New York, stay with this amazing person that let us, stay there for a night or two, and then did our show, packaged everything, flew back to LA.
Well, there is a lot to dissect there. When you say
Yeah,
business
it's
partners, what do you mean? Is it like other students who contributed the
yes, there
monetary part?
was, it was interesting. We first started out, there was four of us, and then it
Mm-hmm.
went to three of us, and then it was myself and my fellow designer, and we stayed together for a few years. His name was Ashton Hirota, brilliant designer, a well-known LA designer now. Um, and we kind of evolved the line, like I said, for about 3 years. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the two of us that really did the LA Fashion Week, the New York Fashion Week. And then when Ashton left the business, I still kept the line for about 3 years after that.
Mm-hmm. In my understanding, this LA Fashion Week and especially New York Fashion Week
Right.
is those are pretty big events, right?
Yes, but with us, we never really tried to go mainstream. We always
Uh
looked
huh.
for different outlets. In New York, we got lucky to participate. It was a big event during the same time as the Mercedes-Benz,
Mm-hmm.
front stage. But we did the independent kind of designer, so it was more within our realm. And also, even back then, I think we always wished big, but we were also realists. We knew what was our place. We kind of knew our market. We knew who we wanted to work with and how alternative our designs were. So we stayed within that perimeter. And also because we didn't have the funds or the needs, we worked with what we had.
And was it the first time where you actually were able to get very close to? I don't know. I believe Alexander McQueen was one of the
Right.
influencers of yours, right?
Yes.
Was it their like first time when you actually felt so close to them, or not necessarily?
Um, I, I, I mean, I wouldn't say we felt close. I was proud of us. I was proud of
Mm-hmm.
myself that we weren't talking about it. We were actually physically doing it and creating
Mm-hmm.
it. And um, I wouldn't even say we got lucky because a lot of it was truly staying up all night long, all day long, and connecting ourselves with people and being able to reach to those contacts of celebrities. And back then there was no, in 2000 when we were starting in line, there wasn't a platform like Facebook. I remember there was Friendster, and Model Mayhem. And so it's like we still utilize the resources that we have, but of course it wasn't like it is today where those
Yeah.
connections are slightly easier, or at least people will get to see you much faster than back then. So it was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work on our end, and every step that we got closer to our goals, we were just so proud. But for me, I'm never gonna reach the Alexander McQueen levels because and that's okay because I think everybody's so different and authentic. Like he's been a massive inspiration on all levels of my design, from couture to hand sewing to studying the way his pattern making. All of that has always going to be an influence in my personal career. But I feel because my career kind of detoured into costume design.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I slightly parted ways away from fashion, but it doesn't mean I'm not going back.
Who was your first celebrity client?
Um, you know, Even back then, we worked with a lot of stylists, so it's not like it's almost like directly, indirectly, we had our
Mm-hmm.
first clients. Pink, I think, was the first artist that I ever designed a piece for. And of course, it was connecting to her stylist at the time and working on the projects that they had going on. And even that was a submission process, like I made a few pieces, we sent them over. I don't even remember if things got used, to be honest with you. But that was my first kind of memory of hearing that name in an email and a
I love
text.
how casually you drop Pink. Like, like I know
Alicia.
over years, like you've worked with a lot of very
Right,
famous people. It's from Pink
right.
to Bieber to everyone else in between, right? And is it the process always been like that? You have to go through a stylist, or at some point they basically calling and begging you to? Uh,
Right. It's different for everybody. And I think that's where I had to start out.
mhm,
That's the only outlet we had is because we were designers, we were creating pieces, we had to then market and promote it. So for us, the beginning stages were showrooms, stylists, friends that might have been connected, wearing it
mhm,
out, getting it photographed, getting some press out of it, some editorial work. Later on, when I started personally moving into designing for dancers and performances, that's when that shifted for me to where I was now working with the creative directors, with the choreographers, started with background dancers, then it escalated to why don't you do the whole performance? Here's the artist creative and here's the dancers, like marry the ambiance together, create the visual environment. And that's when slowly, I started working one-on-one with the celebrities. And then from there, my work was evolving. Their careers were evolving. So those
mhm.
performances turned into tours. Then for me, tours turned into a lot of one-on-one big time award show performances. Then it went to Super Bowl and television. So that's how I gradually, over 20 years, ended up in television.
And you pivoted from fashion to television for the
Yes,
to the costumes. What when did that happen and why? And was it like a
right.
good opportunity came up, or you thought, well, I have this left brain that basically telling me like, okay, you know what, with how about you start monetizing stuff
Right.
because you don't have money? Is it this story?
I think it's both.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a reality check that did happen where, wow, this is very difficult. I don't know how to self-sustain my business. You know, um, I remember around 2008, 2009, I
Yep.
lost everything. I had to sell my furniture to get money to keep going. I mean, there's a lot, like I had that story where I didn't have a place to live. I would stay at my friends' houses while they were, on tours and made a lot of wishes and promised myself to not give up no matter how hard things got. So there's that reality. And then there's also that moment that happened where through being able to establish relationships with my friends that then also became big time choreographers. And I think we grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
And with those opportunities and having those friendships by my side and having those people like believe in my work, that's when it naturally pivoted into utilizing fashion into costuming for me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, when I started working with dancers, I could use almost the artistic details to design, but I couldn't design fashion for stage. I couldn't use the same materials. I had to figure out how to do it with different textiles, how to create movement on stage. How do I allow them to, be upside down and be able to execute the choreography and live and breathe and not be so constructed or restricted. And that's where, you have the avant garde fashion that anything goes, and it's a very statuesque form of design. And then I have stage. So I had to marry the two and never give up on the fashion side, but almost start over on one end, utilize everything I've learned in my years of fashion, and then slowly put my aesthetic and my way of working into designing
In a
performance
sense, you wouldn't be
costumes.
that successful in costume design if you didn't go through fashion first, through
I always,
avant-garde.
oh, 100%. I've always believed that if I didn't learn how to sew a straight line, that if I didn't understand how to do it myself, how to drape, how to create patterns, how to utilize fabric in a way of not being able to cut it, but just to rip it. The smallest elements, the smallest details that help me in fashion, um, I believe accelerated me in costume, because even right now, the position that I'm at, if I don't know how to tell my pattern makers how to create a garment, because I have that knowledge, if I don't, there's a lot of costume designers that kind of, will sketch something and then almost like have that expectations where somebody else will understand what they're trying to do and recreate it or create it. That's never been my take or my way of designing. If I can't do it myself, I'll never be able to explain to somebody else how to do it. So that's how I work. That's like my technique, that with my pattern makers, with my cutter fitters, with my sewers, I have to be able in my head to do it myself in order for us to really execute it. So yes, to answer your question in such a long way, everything I've learned, everything I had to learn how to do on my own in the very beginning, um, very much has been like my tools right now.
So X Factor was your first
TV
television
show.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how's Simon Cowell in real life?
Great, actually,
That's not true. Okay.
but
Yeah.
for me, and that's the thing is I think everybody has different experiences. For me, I was grateful to production, to be able to take a chance on me.
Uh-huh.
The few times, and it was minimal times for me, but the few times that I was with Simon or in the presence of all the creatives together, um, I thought this is a businessman that's, running a show. And now I understand, 15 years later, what it's like to put on a show. So looking
Mhm.
back, it all makes sense to me now. The approach, the direction, the overview, the look and feel of the show, the polished way to execute or the expectations make sense to me. So on that level, I think he was great when I got to work with him.
And to be clear, you weren't the one who dresses Simon and other judges, right?
No, no,
Yeah.
no. And usually the shows have a very split way to do that. The judges
Yeah.
have their own stylist, and then the costume designer will oversee everything that's produced for stage.
How did you get to So You Think You Can Dance? Was it the natural progression?
No, we were shooting X Factor and So You Think on the same CBS slot. And my supervisor was also the supervisor for So You Think You Can Dance. So it was my third season on X Factor that she reached out to me, hey, the EP of So You Think would like to, maybe sit down with you, see if you like the show and you do so well with dancers. Would you be interested to take this interview while we're on set? Um, and I went in on our lunch break, had an incredible conversation. He's one of my favorite people on the planet, Jeff Thacker, who was the executive producer on that show. And we just clicked and it made sense. And I've seen the show before. I've had some friends that were choreographers on it. So the next season over, I took over the show.
So is it different from X Factor?
Yeah, and X Factor was still a very much driven competition show based on visuals, So you
Yeah.
have an artist that's performing vocally, and then you have this scenic behind them full of dancers or props or anything else that kind of supports the performance. With So You Think You Can Dance, the competition is the focus of the dancers.
So
So
you have
they,
to make sure that
right,
the costume is much more
yes.
comfortable.
Comfortable, complicated, unique. That's when I really kind of dove in to study all the genres of dance. I
Hmm.
had to really understand all the different like avenues of Latin dances versus contemporary jazz versus jazz. Broadway. Like I mean, it was the whole world opened up for me. Um, and at the same time, I was still in such great place because I was able to collaborate with the show. I wasn't really told what to do. It was like, here are my ideas, here are the creatives, can you allow me to build it like this? Can I try something new? And I formed an incredible trusting bond with that family. And I designed So You Think for 6 seasons.
It's like that was a great show. I'm not sure. Are they
I
still?
loved it. It was one of my favorites. The other day, no, unfortunately, it got canceled during COVID. But I really do hope that at some point, either the exact same format, something similar to, comes back. It was a beautiful show. The language of dance actually taught me patience and design. It taught me how to breathe and touch fabrics differently. It taught me how to understand movement and really have something beautiful come to life, and have my own language, that there's this beautiful movement that's going on stage, and then I contribute to it with my choice of fabrics, with my choice of design. So it was one of my favorite projects.
Then sometime in mid tens, you got a call for um designer designing the Super Bowl.
Yes.
How did that happen? Walk me through the whole thing.
I have done a few tours for Katy previously. I did the
For Katy
Prismatic,
Perry.
yes, for Katy Perry. And I worked closely with her creative director.
Mm.
And at the time, him and I worked on many other of his clients as well. So a call came in that, hey, would you like to come in for a meeting? We are pitching these ideas right now. It's still in beginning development stages, and we're looking for a costume designer that can come in and also do all the dancers and kind of support the halftime show. This is what Katie's thinking. So I went in for a meeting. I didn't even know what to expect because this is something I've never done in my life. We were talking about life size puppets, bigger and better, oversizing visual manipulation of stage, 3D graphics, 3D screens, how to then incorporate design that doesn't conflict with. I mean, there are so many incredible elements that were involved. And on the spot, I was very excited. And when I got home, I was very nervous. And till this day, I get very nervous about every project that I get involved with. But we started doing the artwork and kind of pitching ideas back and forth with Katie and the creative team, and finally settled on the chess pieces and the sharks and the palm trees and the beach balls and the bikinis. And from there, I believe, less than 4 weeks to pull that off together.
Less than 4 weeks. That's crazy.
Yes.
How do you have to kind of imagine yourself being on a stage, not on the stage, on the in the arena, and from the perspective of the viewers. Like I don't understand how was it the first time you're doing something like that?
Yes. Yes. I mean, prior to that, I've done probably 6 or 7 world tours. So, kind of learned a lot of my mistakes and
Mm-hmm.
figured out what works, what doesn't, and also paid very close attention, like you said, to how does something read live. What we
Yeah.
see on the monitor is not the same thing as what the audience will see that are there present in the moment. So when it came to Super Bowl, my approach was understanding Katie, knowing where we're going with the music, knowing, what the choreography might be like, what the art direction is, but at the same time, how do I not overdo it? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
um, how do we not make it look like that it's too busy or too hectic, and to make every element special? Because the projection on the entire show, just like the expectations were so massive and incredible, that at the same time, you want to be just right, so when the chess pieces, my first take was to do something simple as a base, but then make intricate detailing on it that cohesively everybody looks as a unit, making sure that, she still stood out and had, that artistic element to it, and that visual kind of moment. And then utilizing a chessboard and the chess figurines in a human form, but at the same time, not add color and not go over the top graphic, kind of. I kept myself simple for that, but still very strategic and smart, you know.
And usually these halftime shows are really scrutinized in the media afterwards.
Right.
Were you nervous?
No, I've, all my work, I been lucky enough not to read after things happen, and I try not to pay attention because um, I think as artists or as creatives, we're our self-worst critic. To where if I knew I made a mistake or if I made a wrong call, I already know that. I don't need somebody afterwards to tell us that maybe this wasn't done in a specific way or this didn't, recognize or relate to the audience. Um, there's so many elements. A, it's a job. B, it's, that was my gut instinct and my intuition. So that's what I'm going to stick to. And then the labor and the work that myself and my team put into it, I have to defend it. So the only way all those things can be positive is by taking out the negative. And lucky enough, I think there was a lot of positive reviews. after the Super Bowl. But overall, I try to really not focus on hearsay.
Yeah, it was amazing, and you got a Emmy for that, right?
I did, yes. I believe first costume designer to win for Super Bowl. Yeah.
Excited?
Yeah. I mean, for us, it was, see, it's like every time like something rewarding and beautiful like that happens, I always have a story. And when we were doing the Super Bowl, and of course we were on the field, doing the quick changes. And that's the thing. I'm always hands-on. I'm always front lines with my team. I'll never sit back and watch the show. I have to be in the moment because if God forbid something happens, I have to figure out how to fix it. Um, so we were on the front lines, we finished the show. We went back to our hotel room to wrap up. And as we're boxing and unboxing and packing up behind us on the news, everything is kind of going off about the sharks and the internet's breaking. And we're literally just there. I think there was 7 of us to travel to do this job. And at the moment, I believe there was only 5 of us. And we're just having a beer, celebrating each other, like being really proud that a small team of us were able to pull it off. And like I said, behind us, it's just like this whole world of phenomenon is going on. And it wasn't until like a few hours later that I, got the calls and got the emails that, hey, this is, the sharks are breaking the
Yeah.
internet. This is a worldwide cultural phenomenon. This is a pop culture, all these
Yes.
great things. And it wasn't until the following Halloween that we were outside on the job and I saw like 5 different
Sharks.
sharks walking around. And I was like, what. And then I saw that Target was selling them and the kids, I mean, till this day I wonder if the baby shark song has anything to do with that. But when we did get recognized by the academy and our peers for that, it was truly wonderful because like I said, there's a few of us that were there present on the day of, and had a very limited skeleton crew that was pulling this off, and everybody that was involved pulled miracles, with the time frame that we had, with the budgets that we had and everything going on. It was just incredible again to see that that was acknowledged by
what
our peers.
What's crazy for me, like I was researching this, preparing for the interview, and I
Yeah.
saw shark. I'm like, okay, this is always cliche. But then I realized, like, oh, she made it popular, so it became that everywhere we go now we see the sharks.
Right.
That's fascinating. Okay, so
And it was
it's
never,
your
you know
fault.
what I mean? It was never even an intent. That the
Yeah.
whole thing was like, how do we make something life size? How do we not just create which is, you know, I believe in everything happens for a reason, And when you look at that Super Bowl performance, that was the beginning of my Mass Singer days. You know,
Hmm.
that was kind of my first time working with wire builds and structures and everything else, and that kind of led. So that was for me like the beginning, like really like diving into that world of structural builds and working with foam, and kind of when the Mass Singer days came around, we had a little bit of a platform.
You see, we made the full circle.
Oh,
Uh,
always, yeah,
let's talk a little bit about the different projects you've done
yeah,
over the life, right? So you had tours, you said, with Katy
yes.
Perry, but you also were with Bieber, Usher, and some other, and Pink for sure, right? Which were,
Um, my big tours, I did the Miley Cyrus Gypsy Heart tour. With Bieber, I've done a few performances and a small promo tour. Same
Mhm.
going with Usher. I've done a few performances with him, and then we did a promo tour together. Ariana Grande, honeymoon tour. That was my tour. Um, I don't even remember.
What's the most what's most memorable?
The most memorable.
I know they're all memorable. You're nice. You work with celebrities, but what's like?
Carrie Underwood is somebody I've been for a long time, and
Mhm.
I've done 3 tours with her since the beginning. And I think that is memorable to me because I get to grow with an artist and I get to evolve with them, both on a personal level and on an artistic level.
Mhm.
So every time we get to collaborate on those type of projects, it's very meaningful and memorable to me because I get to physically experience our evolution together, and that's what challenged me and pushes me kind of to create bigger and better.
You seem to be friends with Carrie because I see her quite often on your Instagram. You're her stylist, right? As well.
I have been styling and designing for her for almost 10 years now. So, yes.
How did you guys meet?
It was through her creative director at the time, who I've also worked with on other projects, that was currently with her, and they were doing the Blown Away tour.
Hmm.
And I don't quite remember how my work or my portfolio got in front of her, but I was able to then get an interview with her management team and pitch some ideas. Um, and then from there, like I said, I had a relationship with the creative director, so he was able to vouch for my work, and that was our first time working together.
Nice. Say hi from all our listeners. And
I will
you
do.
also were a stylist for the Eminem's video with Dr. Dre.
Yes, I need a
And,
doctor.
yeah, and what did you do there as a stylist? Is it Styler Gray's costumes or what
Yes,
exactly?
yes, yes. So
Gotcha.
we there was that, and then there was a very famous water scene in that video that represents
Oh,
life.
where he sees where Dr. Dre is in the
Yes.
water. Okay.
And that was actually very special to me because what I was going through in my life was kind of I was between a rock and a hard place, and I got the opportunity to do the video. And I even remember my conversation with Dr. Dre, and him kind of explaining the industry to me. And I was what in my probably mid 20s, and it was that moment on set that I realized for me it wasn't that I was necessarily meant to do the video. It was that I was meant, I was at the right time and the right place to hear this message loud and clear as to like how to keep on going and not give up, and kind of how to use the industry for my benefit rather than fight against it. um so that was a special job for me on that on
Well,
that
tell us
level.
more. What did Dr. Dre say?
To be honest with you, because it was so many years ago, I don't remember how the conversation started, but we were in the midst of changing sets and we were sitting outside, and his trailer was right next to ours. And we just started talking about what everyone does, and the difficulties. And I kind of opened up about my story with him, that I've kind of given everything I've had off my back to continue
Hmm.
pursuing my dream. And it was more so kind of relating to my words, and that everybody will experience the ups and downs, and it doesn't get easier or better. It only gets harder, and you just have to be smarter, and can't remember the exact words, but that's
Gotcha.
that's kind of where things were really special for me, that we
What
did have
year?
that conversation.
What year was that? 11 or 10? Sometime back around that time.
Probably 11. I think
Gotcha.
2011. Yeah.
So one thing I was curious about, and I didn't plan to stay so long on this
Yes.
clip.
Yes.
So that scene when he's underwater, is it real? He was underwater.
They did use a water tank, yes, to shoot a lot of the
Oh God.
realistic segments. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So, how difficult it is to work with these A-list celebrities?
It's not difficult, but I've definitely had to learn how to adjust and adapt. It's so many different personalities, and everybody has their story, and everybody has good and bad days, and you kind of have to realize, your job is to provide a service. So a lot of the times, um, I've had hard days on set, I've had good days on set, and you kind of learn how to kind of navigate yourself around that, you know.
Was there anyone who you didn't enjoy working? I'm not gonna ask you the name of the person, or you had to just stop working with that person because it's just unbearable.
I've never had too many moments in my career where I really had to walk away unless it
Hmm.
was affecting a lot more than just me. And a few times that has happened, but not something, that I do in a repeat. I've had difficult moments. I've had, difficult personalities that I've been in contact with, and you know, I look back at it now, and I've always wondered, like, if when I get older, I wish that I wouldn't have taken the job, or would I wish that I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And now it's kind of like I'm happy it happened. I'm happy that I was able to understand how to work under these conditions or pressures, how to stand up for myself,
Hmm.
how to stand up for my team. So to be honest with you, and probably in the past 7, 8 years, I have not experienced that.
Oh, that's nice.
So, I am trying to figure out right now how to help the young students and how to help the emerging designers to navigate themselves better in those situations.
Hmm.
I think we have a lot of great experiences, and I do think there's sometimes this weird thing happens where wardrobe is kind of looked down upon, or because it's considered below the line, or you're at someone else's service. I am going to continue fighting and advocate about better ways of kind of perceiving working environments.
You're very close, obviously, to entertainment industry, and you've
Yes.
met a lot of people. And there are obviously way more people who couldn't succeed in the industry than the ones who actually
Right.
are stars. And you know those people. How do you like? What prevents people from succeeding? Is it luck? Is it lack of talent? Is it something else?
Oh wow. I think self-sabotage is the first thing that comes to mind.
What do you mean by that?
I think being too much in your head, coming into your own ways, seizing the opportunity in the moment and being too scared to kind of, approach that person or approach that project. I don't want to call it insecurities because I think, everybody has a different journey, and some journeys are meant to kind of walk away from and pivot. And I think with success, it's almost like the unspoken rules where it's like there are sacrifices, there are self-discipline, um, you know, they are constant like forward thinking. Like I said, not being able to stand up for yourself because you never know who is hearing you out, who might actually defend you and agree with you. So I think from a few of my close friends that I've seen kind of start something, amazing with their careers and then walk away has always been that almost like self um, self sabotage. I think that's the best way to explain it. I don't know. It's so hard to, I don't want to judge others. And I think, like I said, everybody has so many different ways of approaching their success or like even defining success.
Mm-hmm.
To some people, it's like, I feel like they've had that great moment and that's all they've ever wanted. So it's like we have expectations that maybe that person should have gone forward and further, and achieved bigger things. But for that individual, that was their goal and it's been achieved, And then you have a completely different world where people are not going to stop until all levels of success are met or their goals or expectations, and then you have people that have very unfortunate circumstances that happen as well. So I think it's a very broad conversation. Probably, I don't know, to sum it all up, I feel like it's very hard, because it's like
Yeah.
how do we define when somebody walks away or stops or what made them successful, what didn't, I guess for me, I can only speak from my experience. Like there have been many nights where I cried myself to sleep, and like I said, didn't have the financial means to keep on going, and something just reminded me that tomorrow's a new day and I'm going to keep trying and I'm going to meet that person and I'm going to try to connect myself and I'm going to keep on learning. That was my personal drive, that was what was like set in my mindset and in my goals. So,
It's interesting you mentioned that taking on projects that you think you might not take. And I thought you started your line out of college, even though I'm not sure if it's common because typically people probably would go and work for somebody else before they
right.
start their own one. Is it typical for industry as
Um,
well?
it varies. I think it really depends, A, what you're going to school for and who you want it to be set, out to
Mm-hmm.
be. For me, I always knew I wanted something of my own. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to get there, so I gave it a shot. Um, and even right now in my career, I feel like I can't sit still. I can't just
Mm-hmm.
continue one project all the time. I'm uncomfortable in that scenario, so even my younger self, I think I was the exact same way. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to just go to school and have side jobs to pay off my degree. I wanted to try something on my own. I wanted to create something that was mine. And, it was all, like I said, every day I was trying to figure out how to do it. and even if I started again right now, it's still like new ways of figuring out how to do it. And not only do we evolve as artists or our careers evolve, the world evolves. So you kind of have to pivot and constantly understand where are your strengths? Can you do this on your own? Are you a leader type? Are you somebody that needs direction? Then do you follow direction well? Then do you work for somebody else? Do you need to learn from somebody else? I think there's so many different questions, especially like you said, when you're in school. What knowledge do you want to gain? I was always an entrepreneur since I was very young. So my approach was try it or fail and then try again. But I've had a lot of my friends that are now in very successful positions that went in a different directions and became PAs first on set for production companies or costume designers, then became associate costume designers, and then are now,
Mhm.
incredible costume designers on their own. So I think it just varies on what path you take.
You mentioned that at some point of your life, I think it was 2008, 2009, when you
Yeah,
had nothing.
yeah,
But then your first Emmy was about 2010, 11. So
yeah.
about 2, 3 years difference from nothing to holy shit.
I had nothing from probably, I would say, 2002 until 2010-ish. And even then, you know, after graduating FITM, like I said, I was on my own with a degree, had my clothing line that was started in college, then had my little side jobs, at a hair salon as a waitress, at a store. And even all those incomes didn't kind of allow for that lifestyle in LA. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think it was about 2004, 2005. I lost my apartment, couldn't afford to pay for it, had to live with my manager for a little bit. Um, then at that time, my parents had no idea because I was able to keep my cell phone on. So we were able to communicate. So they had no idea that I was kind of facing a little bit of a crisis. And then still kept, working with my business partner and living at what was then our manager's apartment. Um, had very hard nights, waking up not in the best, not in the best space or spirits. And then a group of friends of mine went on tour. So I stayed at their apartment for a couple of months. And that's when I really kind of started getting myself back up. So that was probably around 2006. And then slowly like started picking myself, back up, got a 1 bedroom apartment, finally again on my own, and then shared it with another person. So they got the bedroom, I got the floor and the couch. And then continued growing, and working. So it wasn't, yes, you're right. It seemed like it was, you know, 10 years of very hardships. And then all of a sudden, yeah, then there's that Emmy.
How many times you wanted to quit?
um, I can't even count. Um,
And if you were to quit, what would you do?
I don't know. You know, um, I feel like maybe that's why I didn't quit. I feel like there wasn't really another option that I could think of. I would often think, oh, I would make a great manager, or I couldn't find the people that I wanted to work for me, so I can become that person. So I think there was always like trying to think of something else to do, but in my heart, um, I think I just genuinely believed that I could do this. Genuinely believe that I'm doing it the right way, that there has to be a payoff. And I think for so long too, when you like read the self-help books or The Secret, and you constantly like listen to like outside voices telling you to keep going and it's okay, and and also the people that I admired, like I studied their stories and like read their books, and I was impressed by, okay, they can overcome this. What makes me so different? Like I can overcome this. So there's kind of like this Friday night slipping down the wall crying, I never want to do this again. This was the worst job. I want to quit. And then waking up Saturday morning, all right, I had my tantrum, I'm going to try again. And I think it was that mentality, even after my first Emmy, when I still didn't have that much, there was still struggles, and there's still struggles every day. Um, But I just till this day believe in my heart exact same thing that I believed 20 years ago.
It's interesting. Like one of your interviews, I saw. You know how every time you in American culture, it's very important to be competitive.
Yeah.
But when I saw your interview, you actually emphasized working with others, and in fact, you almost said that you're not as competitive. But then I'm
Right.
talking to you right now. I'm like, oh no, she clearly is competitive. But is it competition or is it more like a pursuit of what the only thing you
Right.
wanna do? What is it?
I think it's a determination versus competition.
Uh huh.
You know, I am competitive in my own goals. I'm
Mm-hmm.
competitive with myself to where could I be better today than I was yesterday? I think that's probably the personality that you're getting from me right now. You know, there
Mm-hmm.
was always
Yeah.
that challenge. There was always if I don't have options, if I don't have extra hands to help, if I have to do this on my own, then that's when you compete with yourself. That's when you outdo yourself. Um, when it comes to my admiration within my peers or my team or people that I work with, the collaboration there is something that I will always promote because every single day that I go into work, I learn another word, another technique, and anything and everything that I touch or that my team helps me build then goes back to my competitive personality. I'm now better than I was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I split the two. I will always promote and support collaboration, but I will always like challenge myself to be a better version of me.
You have people who work for you.
Right.
Are you demanding?
Um,
What's the
yes and
turnover?
yes and no. I had to think about that. I am very hands-on. I'm part of my team, but my expectations, I wouldn't say I'm 100% a perfectionist, but my expectation is for us to do the best that we can.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, like I told you way earlier in our podcast, if somebody tells me something is complete, I don't settle for that until my eyes, my head, my heart are 100% settled that something is done. So my team already knows that although we will laugh through the process, we will cry through the process together, I will always ask for advice. At the end of the day, I will always ask for more. So when I push myself or the production pushes me, I push my team.
Mm-hmm.
And in such a way to where I now see, the customers that I work with 7, 10 years ago are now incredible assistant costume designers and incredible designers, actually. And that, like, something I take a lot of pride in because, it's almost like I watched somebody took on something for me and we learned together, we grew together, and now, there could come a day where I'm going to work for them. And I always have to keep that mentality that I have to be not hard, but solid and consistent. I think
Mm-hmm.
so that's probably like the best way to describe it.
So, how much of you is a businesswoman and how much of you is artist?
Oh, I struggle all the time. I think, there's days where it's 100% business and the art part of me like relaxes. And then there's days where I'm 100% artist and then everything like I can't answer an email. But majority of the time I would say I try to stay balanced actually. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
very important. I think being a dreamer and a realist in the same sense is very, very important because in order to create, you have to almost like set your foundation. And with foundation comes business, you know, um, and then you get the freedom to be an artist. So I try to really monitor both sides.
Who are your friends? They are celebrities or they're just regular people who you've met over the years? Or just neighbors, maybe?
Aren't celebrities regular people? um,
I mean, you know what I
yeah,
mean. Like,
yeah,
it's.
yeah, yeah. Um, you know, my friends are people who I love. I wouldn't say that they're celeb in this group or this group or neighbors. My team is my family. Like I said, I've
Mhm.
been with them for many years, so a lot of them are some of my closest confidants. My bestest friends. I've been, 19, 20 years now, going strong since we've met in LA. I have friends from back home. I still have friends when I was a little girl in Moscow, you know.
Really?
So I think, you know, I kind of look at my circle as family. So my family is very large, you know, but
Hmm.
it's also we're very tight knit. So trust is a big thing. And then I have acquaintances.
And speaking of family, you have two
Yeah,
kids, right? And
I do.
how are you able to be a mother and combine it with with all these projects you're working on? Like, where is the
I don't
balance?
know. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. My kids come first. You know, that was a really, really important and big thing for me to learn. For so long. I mean, imagine 20 years of yourself you just keep giving to your work, you know, and to working out phone calls and emails and texts, and there were no limits. You know, you answer something in the middle of the night. I mean, the amount of all-nighters that I pulled, you know, sewing and almost having no boundaries and trying to push forward. And then when my kids were born, um, and I know you hear this all the time, the
Hmm.
priorities change, things change, but for me it was really like everything changed. You know, my boundaries went up. I had to be very transparent with my producers and my team. Like, hey guys, these are the hours that mean a lot to me. I will design you the show within these hours, but I have to take them to school. I have to be there. You
Hmm.
know, I have to pick them up from school. So it's like every day, even now, I'm trying to figure out how to balance. But um, I was always like, you know, in the beginning worried, how do you do this? Like, how can you focus and devote yourself? Eh, And I think you can. I think if you are surrounded with people that really understand that you're giving it everything you've got, but at the same time, you know, everybody in my circle right now, on a personal and professional level, knows that I'm a mom first, you know, and that's been something that I've set as a precedent since my firstborn. And I think that's how I try to make it work. And my husband, my incredible husband, is a huge help to making this work. Both of us, you know, we're trying
Yeah,
to figure out how to do this.
that's great. That's great. So from career's point of view,
Yeah.
you've achieved a lot, right? But you obviously, uh, I don't see you stopping where you're right now.
Right.
What's next for you? Where do you see yourself, and what do you want to try?
You know, like I told you before, I'm very uncomfortable when it comes to like being in one place at one time.
Mm.
So I've been doing television for a very long time, and slowly, I've been studying the roles of producers, executive producers, directors. So I am finding myself, you know, in position right now where I can ask whether or not I can be involved to that extent on some of the shows that I'm working on. Um, I am currently in very early development of writing my own show. Um,
Oh,
yes,
is it
very
public
early.
information?
Yes, it is. Very early, you know, and it's something that's been a passion project of mine for a long time. And I, ever since I had children, I kind of switched where that was geared towards adult and now it's geared towards children. So I'm working on that on my own, and then there might be another clothing line in the future. So in the midst of kind of going back to my roots. And then, yeah, you know, for the first time in my life, I don't really have a plan. I would love to work in movies. You know, that's something that, of course, has been a driving force for me, um, to get my work to where it's at now, to really experiment that genre and go into that world. And I always throw it out in the universe. You know what I mean? It's I think because now I've always been open to pivoting and kind of finding ways that make me happy. I think that's been my journey too for so long. And we often forget to say it, you know, good days, bad days, very hard times, easier times. There has to come a place where you're happy with your choices and you're happy doing what you're doing. And I am finally learning that right now, that I'm getting to the place where I'm happy and content, you know, and now, you know,
Yeah.
shooting for other things.
And you mentioned that you would be interested to work in the movies as
Yes.
I'm assuming it's a costume designer, right?
Yes.
And if you look back of the movies you've watched, which movie do you wish you would design costumes for?
Yeah, my favorite off the top of my head, The Crow, Interview with the Vampires, The Cell.
Well, The Crow is with Brandon Lee. Is it?
Yes,
Oh,
one of my favorite. I used to fall asleep to that movie. It's one of my favorite movies.
wow.
And then Interview with the Vampires,
Uh huh.
beautiful
Yeah.
costuming. And then The Cell. I know it sounds like I'm a very dark person, but
It does.
yes. But no, I'm very much intrigued by the details and the artistry that sometimes costume designers have to kind of create combining light and dark, and those probably top of my three movies. Oh, I'll add a fourth, Marie Antoinette, Sophia Coppola version.
Oh, gotcha. I see.
So
It's
yeah,
something that the
yeah,
historical one. That's cool. Yeah. Well, let, hopefully I'm gonna see you soon in the cast in the end. So
I hope so.
I have a quick blitz for you. I'm
Yes.
gonna ask you a quick question, and you can answer alone if you want, or just give me a quick answer. How about
Okay.
that? Okay. So, what's your favorite movie?
The Crow.
Favorite song? Yeah.
Whoa. Um. Oh no. Favorite song. I would probably have to say the Beatles' "Let It Be." I actually have the lyrics as a tattoo.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Is it on your hand? Is it the one I should
No,
see?
it's on my rib cage.
Okay, I'm not asking to show.
Yeah.
Okay. The favorite designer?
Alexander McQueen and Hussein Shalaya. That's split for me.
Gotcha. Favorite country to visit?
Greece.
Favorite book?
Um, I believe it's the Genius by Salvador Dali.
Got it. Favorite? Oh, I'm sorry. First item on your bucket list.
First item on my bucket list. Vacation. With everything going on, we can't go anywhere, so that'll probably be everyone's bucket list.
So let's go to the final question.
Yes.
What life advice would you give to younger self?
To my younger self. Um, Probably to speak up, to be able to have your voice be heard and not be scared to ask for things that are kind of burning inside versus being able, to say them out loud. I think we all struggle with that there's two different conversations going on. So probably, yeah, let the voice be heard.
You didn't speak up.
Um, Not as much as I do now. No, I didn't. I think there's a lot of things I've kind of accepted. And now looking back, that probably be the best advice I can give, like the little girl inside me is, and I'm learning that. I'm learning how to really, you know, go after what you really want and be able to share that. And then also at the same time, stand your ground.
Marina, thank you very much for fantastic
Thank
interview.
you. Thank you so much. You're awesome. This was great.